Yeah, so I think it's a really good question by Devesh, because I get this question a lot when it comes to people getting into the industry and how to really break in and add value. And I think that's kind of the key point, is to add value, whether it's volunteering your time with a local team or a university. Just try to get in touch with the coach or manager and see kind of where their pain points are. And I think a lot of the times when people who want to get into the industry, they want to begin with building models, or kind of maybe being a little bit too exuberant. Sometimes it's good to listen to the decision makers and see where their pain points at, because at the end of the day, you're kind of like a consultant, where you'd like to see where their pain points are and maybe make their job a little bit easier and more efficient. That's a really good question from Tim, because I think the word analytics has kind of developed like this kind of umbrella term, and I think it's going to impact all of those different verticals, whether it's in the management side, the fan experience side, betting. I don't think there's any one that's really going to be more impacted. Maybe on the fan experience side, just because so many more people consume sports as a product, as opposed to maybe on the client side or the team side, because there's only so many teams, there's only so many players and people behind management. But it scales like massively across different sports and different fan bases. If you can use analytics and metrics to enhance broadcasts, or to help teams connect better with their audiences, I think that's probably the biggest place of growth when it comes to analytics. So Matt, what I would say is Moneyball really did change a lot, right? It's kind of birthed this kind of new industry, and Sportlogiq, us being here, is a byproduct of that. If you think about all of the sports, whether it's all the major North American sports or European sports, whether that's soccer, baseball, hockey, basketball, you can see the businesses and the different ways that data is being incorporated in those sports, how that's completely changed in the last 10 years. I think what it's changed the most, maybe, I guess is the question, is I think it's allowed us to be maybe a little bit more experimental, and also maybe more cognizant and open to change when it comes to maybe these disruptive types of technologies or ways of thinking. And I think that's a good thing. I think when it comes to sports, sometimes people who've played or who have been in the industry for so long have maybe developed a lot of biases, and those biases, I think, for good measure, have helped them get to where they are, and also have a lot of value. But I think it also allows you to look at things maybe a little bit more objectively, and maybe reel some things back in, and maybe develop a new type of way of observing the game. Yeah, so again, like what I was talking about before in terms of analytics having like a large umbrella of things that it serves, sports science is another one of those things that I guess falls under analytics, but it's also like its own standalone kind of field. And at Sportlogiq, we're working on technology when it comes to 2D and 3D body pose. There's things that I think there's a lot of different applications in the future when it comes to sports science, when it comes to maybe it applies more to coaching and the player side as opposed to maybe management. But I think there's obviously a wide range of applications when it comes to sports science, and obviously here at Sportlogiq we're trying to be a part of that. So to Mike, I think everyone kind of has a different starting point when it comes to when they want to break into the industry. Some people might have more experience on the sports side. Some people may have some more backgrounds in a specific technical degree, whether that's stats or economics or business. I think the key is really to kind of see where your value will be, and you kind of need to be maybe a little bit more honest with kind of where you think you could fit in an organization or a company that does media or something along those lines. But to answer, I guess, the question directly, what kind of softwares? I mean, I'm maybe a little bit more biased. my technical background is mostly in Linux and Python and some data visualization softwares that kind of wrap around that. But I think the easiest one to get to know is actually R. It's a statistical language that was built specifically for data analysis, where Python is kind of more of a multi-purpose language, which kind of connects with like more systems and stuff like that. But again, I think it comes back down to what I was talking about earlier in terms of trying to add value, and if it's just really building Excel reports for a place that you're volunteering, like that's getting yourself from point zero to point or from point A to point B. And I would recommend buying a bunch of books. I think the MOOCs, or the massive online learning platforms, are tough to digest. I've done them a couple myself, and I've learned, and it kind of goes in parallel with a lot of the advice that you get from ministry, is that if you have a project, if you have an idea, if you have a certain passion project that you kind of want to explore when it comes to sports analytics, just go and try it. Maybe pick a software and try to use it in the way that you think is the best. But I think when it comes to any statistical learnings or anything along those lines, you kind of just need to start and fail and learn. Well, again, it's a good question from Julian. I think when it comes to I guess analytics and machine learning, everyone wants to know what's the absolute best that it can get to. I think we're really just at the forefront of it all, and 100% simulations, I think is probably further down the line, and we'll let the EA Sports engine, the 2K engines, maybe take care of that a little bit more for now. But I think what excites me the most right now is kind of the change from, I guess, the conventional ways that we've consumed sports analytics, whether it's on the performance side or on the media side, and how that's really going to further develop with things like tracking data. Here at Sportlogiq, we're obviously super proud of being able to be at the blend of event data with tracking data, and developing things with computer vision and other data streams along those lines. And I think the adoption as well, in terms of a second case, I think is a really important part. I think 5-10 years ago, you wouldn't see as many teams being involved with using analytics on an everyday basis, on a day-to-day basis. But I think now it's really grown, and if you're not a part of it, then you're behind. And seeing our clients, the teams that we work with, ask these great questions, I think is a really exciting thing moving into the future. I really don't think that's the case. I don't think analytics really needs to prove that it's useful. I think it's here to stay. It's obvious that based on people in the public, that there are some teams maybe more aligned with being more innovative in using data-driven decision making. But I think what's really important, which doesn't get enough attention, is the other teams that maybe don't get mentioned. I think obviously working with a lot of the NHL teams here is you get to see the different questions and I guess the different philosophies that these teams have, and I think that's really, really exciting. I don't think it's going to digress in any way, shape, or form, just because now that you've kind of got this ball rolling, you have all these teams who no organization or no team's the same, and they're trying to get their competitive edge. They believe that they have some qualities about the organization that they think is helping them win, and they're probably just further going to, I guess, try to improve based on, I guess, what makes them a good team or a good organization top to bottom. I fell in love with the game of hockey first. I played all the way up playing junior hockey, and wasn't going to be a pro player by any means, and definitely wanted to stay attached to the game as much as I could. And I think that sports is one of those things where it's very inclusive, or it tries to be, and that team environment that you go to, you go to war with your teammates, or you have that team dynamic. I think is really speaks to a lot of people, and I think that's why I wanted to work in sports, and obviously working in sports analytics is definitely a privilege. And I mean, again, another good question by Jacob. It'd be nice if everyone got along, hey? I think the reason that there's kind of like this us versus them, I guess, environment or dynamic is because of, I guess, the way that sports analytics first kind of came up, and the people that kind of paved the way or pioneered sports analytics in any one of their sports probably had to yell a little bit louder than they probably had to, just to get some notoriety or to get the respect. And I think we've gotten to a point where we can honestly say that they were probably right at the time, and now we're at a point where I think we can start having more nuanced conversations when it comes to sports analytics, because we don't want to be throwing rocks at the other side. I think we can find a way to have better conversations around the sports and around data, and I think that's one of our goals here at Sportlogiq, which is we're trying to empower all of our clients, whether it's internal or external, with data that can help them improve, and that's constant across all of our different verticals, whether that's in media to have better engagement with fans. It's the same thing for our teams and organizations where they want to make better decisions, and I think the answer is obviously it's always in the middle, and I think we can do a better job in general in terms of having better conversations, and maybe not being black and white on every single thing, and saying player X is bad and player Y is amazing. I think there's obviously room in the middle for us to have conversations about sports.